Everybody, let's call the meeting to order. The first file for our consideration is Senate File Number 54, Electricity Production Facilities on Municipal Property. This was a joint interim bill. Does anybody want to present anything about the bill? It was a product of our joint interim. It was of interest to our municipality, so let's let them tell us about the bill. Who would like to address this?
Everybody's looking at everybody else.
Welcome. Mr. McLaren.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. My name is Bob McLaurin. I'm with WHAM. We're here to speak in favor of Senate File 54, as you indicated, had been worked on through the interim. This is a bill that's the city of Cheyenne has a fair amount of interest in, but across the state, we see this as a potential opportunity for some cities to generate additional revenue. I know there's a fair amount of concern about this bill from some of our friends at WREA and some of the other utilities, but as I read the bill, we'd have to have an agreement with the utility before you could do something like this. We think it's a good bill, provides additional revenue opportunities for the cities and towns in the state that may be applicable to, but I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Mark Rennie, who's on the Cheyenne City Council, to give you a little more detail, if that's okay.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry, would you help us with your name?
It's, yes, Mr. Chairman, it's Mark Rennie. Last name is spelled R-I-N-N-E.
R-I-N-N-E, pronounced Rennie.
Rennie, correct.
Thank you, sir. Go ahead.
All right. So, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I am a member of I think I'm the longest standing member of the City Council for Cheyenne. I'm in my 26th year. And so I appreciate the opportunity to let me talk to you today. A couple of years ago, to give you a little bit of background, one of our council members was helping his daughter with a project at her home in a community a little bit south of here. And in the process of doing that, he had to run some things out to their landfill. And when he got out there, he observed, and to quote him, their whole landfill was covered with solar panels. So he came back to Cheyenne and said, is this something that we can do? And we'd spent the last couple of years doing some research, exploring, educating ourselves on what it would take if we could build a small solar array. And we have a site that we picked out for it. Our landfill is located to the west of Cheyenne. And there was an area of it that was capped in the 1980s of approximately 100 acres, and it is not usable for anything. There are prohibitions, as you all, I'm sure know, of what you can do on a capped landfill. But one thing you can do is place solar panels. So we looked at that thinking, okay, we have an unusable piece of land and perhaps we can do something to make it productive and generate some money for the city. So that's where the impetus of this idea came from. Our city currently, Cheyenne uses 350 megawatts of power a year. We anticipate with the data centers and some of the Bitcoin mining that's going to be developed in Cheyenne that our needs in the next 6 years or so, by 2030, will be 1,200 megawatts a year. Our little small solar array we think will generate maybe 14 to 20 megawatts per year.
So can I ask you a question? You say megawatts instead of megawatt hours. So you're talking about usage of electricity. That's usually measured in terms of a certain capacity times a certain time period. And so, and where the megawatt is sort of an expression of demand. Like I've got a 2,000 watt electric heater I can plug in and that will pull it. I can leave it on for 1 hour or 10 hours or a week. So I'm trying to understand how you're using that term.
Senator, and to be honest, I can't answer that for you, and
Okay.
I can get you that answer.
All right, thank you.
Actually, and I'm sure maybe some of the people in the room behind me could probably explain that too.
Yeah,
But I will get that for you.
it's a common thing that people mix up.
And as one that actually, doesn't work in that industry, don't have the knowledge to answer the question.
Yes, sir. Well, I didn't mean to interrupt you,
No.
but thank you.
You're fine, thank you. Anyway, so that's, I said, using the quantities that I was given, we will produce 14 to 20 megawatts per year. So I understand that and we understand that there will be objections from the power companies. We've talked to them, we've contacted some of them, and obviously they do not want municipalities. They view that as a competition with them. And if I were one of their executives, I would take the same position. So I understand where they're coming from. But I think that if Senate File 54 is approved, I think it addresses some of their concerns. First of all, we are required as a city to partner with a locally certificated utility and to have a power agreement or have an agreement with them where they would purchase the power from us and then turn around and sell it to their customers. So they do derive a benefit from the situation. It also allowing us to generate a small amount of power would help meet our future energy demands, which I referred to earlier. It's a little more efficient, as you all know, when you're sending power over a long period of time, there's always a little bit of drain or loss, and by having it generated locally, it's probably a little more efficient. And it could serve as an energy source during a catastrophe. The other thing that I think is most important of all is that we view this as like a novel and innovative way to generate some more income for the city. By allowing us to develop this revenue source and increasing some of our revenues, it meets our needs, the needs that we have, whether it be fixing streets, maintaining buildings, purchasing equipment for police or fire. And again, giving us the ability to generate a little bit of money on our part, it means we don't have to look necessarily at increasing taxes somewhere or increasing fees. We're coming back and asking you guys for money. So I would really appreciate it if you would consider a positive vote on Senate File 54. And if there are any other questions, I'd be happy to answer them if I can.
Thank you very much, committee. Questions for Councilman Rennie, Senator Dockstader, and then Senator Landon.
Dr. Rennie, Mr. Chairman, Dr. Rennie, what are you anticipating raising on this, 14 to 20? What kind of income would you see annually for the city?
Honestly,
Dr. Rennie?
pardon me, through you, Mr. Chairman. I wasn't given that figure, and I will track that down for you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Landon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Dr. Rennie, thanks for being here. How big is that facility out there? What kind of acreage are we talking about?
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, Dr. Rennie.
It's 100 acres.
100 acres. Anybody else? Anybody else? Dr. Rennie, I know there's a lot of electricity production on land owned by the city of Cheyenne. I mean, a lot of these, we've seen a lot of construction of wind turbines, and I don't know if the new bank of wind turbines up on top is on city-owned land. I'm not sure where the city-owned land begins, but I think they might be. So I guess under this bill, you would have preferred to possibly build those wind turbines yourselves and own those wind turbines rather than have it be done by, I assume there's a third party that owns those, that built those facilities.
Correct, Senator, there is. The wind turbines on city-owned land are south of the interstate on the Belvoir Ranch. I think we have approximately 90 wind turbines there. To answer your question, yes, it would be our preference to do it ourselves. The simple answer is we're looking to generate more funds for our citizens and for our budget, and we think we can realize more monies that way.
And then, so Mr. Rennie, you, or Councilman Rennie, you would do this by an agreement with the public utility that serves the city of Cheyenne. That's what I understand?
That's my understanding as well.
Do you feel that that's kind of an arm's length arrangement between the city and the serving utility?
Senator, probably. we're just responding to, I mean, that's the way the legislation is currently written. I know I've talked to some others that said that they'd be a lot happier if we just were able to sell it to anybody wholesale. I think we would be amenable to any amendments, but that would let us make an arrangement to sell it.
I guess the point I'm getting at is that that utility is bound to serve your community, and you have restrictions on how that utility serves the community. And you have an agreement with them called the franchise agreement. It's usually renewed. Some of them are 5 years and some of them are 10 years, and they have particular requirements. And I guess the point I'm getting at is utilities may not feel that this is so arm's length because you kind of hold the hammer of the franchise over them. And in Wyoming, you could actually take over the utilities' local facilities. The law does provide for that now. So when you try to maybe build a facility and then encourage the utility to buy your production, you still have that franchise over here kind of hanging on them. Can you explain how that goes and what the arm's length nature of that might be? Or not?
Senator, no, you have an excellent point, and I understand that that would be a concern on the part of the utilities. And I guess my perception is that's what attorneys are for, to work those things out and come to an agreement that works for both of us. Obviously, in some respects, I mean, it does us no good to do harm to a local utility. We need them probably as much as they need us. And I think, at least for my part, all we can do is try and work out something that is amenable and beneficial to the both of us. As I said, I think, they're not entirely without leverage in the equation.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Rennie. Just a little bit more. So as I read this bill, and you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong, but right now under Wyoming law, a municipality can own and operate electric facilities for their own citizens. I think the good senator from Torrington, you know that firsthand. We have several communities in Wyoming. Not all of them have generation. Most of them are just their distribution utilities, but they're able to provide that as part of their public utility mission to the customers and to their citizens. This is different because this isn't going down that path to supply electricity to their own citizens. This is giving you kind of a merchant player, just like all the other third-party developers we see across Wyoming. This lets the municipalities play in that market. And so you become, it's somewhat speculative, somewhat risky, but under some conditions can be lucrative as well. But so it's not really about providing a public utility service to your citizens. This is about entering into a new business that would provide a revenue stream for the municipality. But I have a hard time, even though it has electrons moving in generation and uses land, I can think of 1,000 businesses that a municipality could go into and compete with the private sector and and supplement their budget with. And I'm not seeing much difference with this. I'd love to give you a chance to comment on that. Go ahead, sir.
Senator, I can't say that I disagree with you. And this is an instance where, yes, essentially we are providing or generating power, providing not necessarily a service, but a product that private industry is providing in this case, although that industry, I think in most cases, seems to be a monopoly in our area. But you're not wrong. It's just an opportunity we saw. Again, it's not a big project. I don't think it's something that's going to generally compete. It's a chance for us to use unusable land and make it productive, and that's where we're coming from on it.
Okay. And just on the last point about it's either the municipality or the monopoly. I'm understanding that your serving utility doesn't own those wind turbines that are on municipal land that you've managed to develop 91 of them, and they probably have an investment of over $1 million apiece. So that's pretty significant
Significant.
interest by someone who I don't think is the utility, right?
Correct.
So why can't you get a third party to develop the solar facility that you're looking for, pay you benefits, and not compete with the private sector?
We perhaps could.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else? Sorry to take this over.
That's okay. Mr.
Senator
Chairman,
Dockstader.
Mr. McLaren, Bob, is there a formal statement from WHAM on any of this that we might reference?
We don't have a formal
Mr.
statement.
McLaren.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Dockstader, we don't have a formal written statement. We support this bill because, given what's going on with property tax reductions, and the cities have to look high and low to try to supplement their budgets. So, but we don't have a written formal statement at this point, Senator.
Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else? Thank you, gentlemen. Stay close by. Let's
Thank
hear
you, Mr.
from the
Chairman.
public on this. Anybody in the room who would like to testify on
Thank you,
this bill?
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Who would like to testify? Come on up. Here's a familiar friend. How are you?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and committee. I think I would, so Dale Steenbergen, CEO of the Greater Cheyenne Chamber of Commerce and the Wyoming Chamber of Commerce. So we have about 22 chambers and economic development agencies that partner through us for governmental affairs. I guess I would just start out by saying this. How many of us woke up this morning and said, man, if we could just get government more involved in our lives, or maybe they could own a business and compete with me, that we would be so much better off. And I don't think probably any of us thought that. So, I appreciate that the cities are looking for money, and that they're worried about budgets, and we all want education and paved streets. But whenever you go into the private sector and you start delivering a product that the private sector is delivering, right, that they didn't ask you to get involved with, you just thought, hey, we can make money there. That seems to be a problem. I don't care if it's electricity production or maybe hotels or whatever it would be, right? So I think we're very concerned about that. And I would also go into your point a little bit about, we certainly in Cheyenne, we do have power production at a third party. But understand, this is the people, it's not the government of Cheyenne, it's the people of Cheyenne are gonna go out, build a power production plant. Then the franchisee who is dependent on an agreement with that city is not going to tell them no. They're going to be very interested in doing that because their financial future depends on it. And then that is going to be sold back to the people that live here, right? And supposedly there's going to be money made off of that, but I own it, right? So how does that exactly work? So that fair competition thing really gets soured on this deal. So we, wouldn't be real excited about it, but be better if it was sold to somebody else. But selling it directly to your people from the people that own the power plant, that gets to be really quirky. So I won't take up a bunch of time. I would just say we have some real concerns about this bill and about how competition is being limited and how that would work out for cost savings for the people and businesses of our community that ultimately need to be successful so that the communities can be successful. Thank you, and I'd answer any questions.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for Mr. Steenberg? It's good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Who else would like to address the committee? Yes, sir. Come on up. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Austin Rodemaker on behalf of the Tri-State Generation and Transmission Association, Electric G&T, serving wholesale power to 8 of the 11 distributive cooperatives in Wyoming. Mr. Chairman, committee, thank you. We're here in opposition of Senate File 54 for a couple of reasons. Number one, Tri-State's very protective of their member owners' certificated service territories. And while we appreciate that the bill has a contract agreement clause in there, we do feel that this becomes a very slippery slope, camel's nose under the tent type situation, where a simple amendment could pull that back, and then suddenly our territories are being threatened. That's a big concern for us. Another concern is something that you noted earlier, Mr. Chairman. We work with municipalities on permits, franchise agreements and such, and we have concerns that this bill does give leverage over the utilities in those certain situations when negotiating those types of situations. And finally, there's a clause in there that talks about operating. In order to construct it, there's no requirement to have an agreement. So theoretically, the municipality could construct something, then potentially have that leverage before they actually operate it. And so we do believe that the bill is well-intentioned. We appreciate that WHAM came to us to discuss if we had any amendments. At the time. We just don't see that. And we think it's well-intentioned, but it's just not ready for showtime.
Thank
For
you.
that, I stand for any questions.
Thank you very much, sir. Questions for Mr. Rodmaker? Senator
Mr.
Dockstader.
Rodmaker, would Tri-State ever entertain setting this system of solar panels up for the city and working some type of agreement out with them?
Mr. Rodmaker.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Dockstader, yeah, I do believe that we would be open into some sort of agreement. But we would have to, obviously, I can't speak on behalf of contracts, but I do believe that we'd at least be open to entertaining the conversation.
Anybody else? Along those lines, Mr. Rodmaker, knowing the electricity markets, which I assume you kind of do, would other entities be interested in providing that service and owning those facilities?
Mr. Chairman, I wish I could speak on behalf of them, but I certainly can't. But I do believe that anybody's at least open to entertaining a conversation like that.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Taylor, did you make the trip for nothing? Or you just,
Pretty much. Mr. Chairman, Sean Taylor, Executive Director of the Wyoming Rural Electric Association, and I should just stop there and echo what he said. I hate to be on the opposite side of one of my board members and Mr. McLaren, but for the same reasons that have been expressed, particularly the territorial concerns, as you all know, we're very protective and of our certificate of service territory. And as Mr. Rodmaker said, we see this as kind of camel's nose under the tent. I did, in the interim, testify that we would probably stay neutral, because I had a good conversation with Mayor Collins about this, and I appreciate what he's trying to do, being a citizen of Cheyenne. But the more we talked about it internally with our co-ops, the threat to the certificated service territory is there, and therefore we oppose it. Thank you.
thank you, sir. Questions for Mr. Taylor? Thank you. Who's next? Come on. So, last call for in the room then. Are you guys not, Mr. Bush? We've got like a couple of other bills to go through today, so appreciate. Mr. Bush, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. David Bush on behalf of Black Hills Energy, the electric provider here in Cheyenne. Just wanted to confirm what you had mentioned earlier about the utility owning wind generation in the city. The only generation that we own, wind generation, is located mostly on private land west of town. It's a Corriedale project. I've spoken to the committee before about it. That's a project that we built specifically for some of our customers that wanted wind energy. They paid for it. It doesn't go to the rest of our customers. It's something a project that we did for them. A lot of it actually goes to Rapid City. So just wanted to confirm that for you and answer that question. So
Appreciate that. Any questions for Mr. Bush? And I would guess that because Mr. Bush's company serves the city of Cheyenne, we probably shouldn't push him too hard about, his relationship with the city and that Black Hills relationship with the city. But Senator Landon, go right ahead.
So thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've been sitting here trying to formulate some kind of question, and it's kind of hard to do, but I know that when I go to the landfill up in my community, there have been 100 times in my brain that I look over at all that property and I think, I wonder what's going to happen to that property. I wonder what we could do there. So I really kind of tip my hat to Cheyenne for thinking outside the box. How do you identify opportunities like that as a company? And would your company ever be interested in doing what the city of Cheyenne is thinking about could be done with that property? Where's the impetus? Where does that come from? It's not like they had anybody knocking on the door to say, hey, can we do something with your landfill? So they come up with the idea, and I think what we're telling them is you got to carve up what you could maybe make and get people from the outside, and I kind of lean that way too, but any thoughts about that? I mean, how do you identify opportunities like that as a company, and what would your company ever do a project like that, for example?
Mr. Bush?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Landon, yes, I mean, I'm not in the business development side of our business, and we've got a whole team that looks at that stuff. Generally speaking, we can't just go build generation. We have to have a purpose for it. We go to the Public Service Commission, get a certificate for public convenience and necessity. I always butcher that. And have to justify the reasons for it. In this instance, I would guess there probably is some conversations happening all the time in our company about identifying land and where we could potentially put something like that, and looking at other developments. Recently, that I would guess we probably haven't had to as much, because there has been so much third-party development going on in Cheyenne. There's Enbridge is doing a big project, solar project around south of town, south and east. We just took energy from, well, it started out as Q-Cells and now it's Southern Power, another solar project that's south of town off South Greeley Highway. And so we're I think in a position of having enough coming in from those third parties that we probably haven't had as much need to identify other projects. We, as Councilman Rennie said, the load here in Cheyenne is growing quickly with the data centers that are coming in, which has been great for Cheyenne and great for the community and the state, really. We have agreements with those companies that a lot of that power is served from market sources. As you know, we have our coal generation up in Gillette that serves Cheyenne, and a natural gas plant east of town here that serves Cheyenne primarily. And then some other wind and market sources that kind of fill in the gaps. But we have done, in my opinion, we've done a great job at balancing out the needs of those larger loads that are coming in with maintaining service to our regular customers who, quite frankly, don't care where the power comes from. They just want it to be there when they hit the switch. So we're always continuing to look at opportunities for growth and how we can continue to maintain what we have and grow Cheyenne. We've got a lot of interest with our fiber lines running through here, our proximity to Denver. We're in a great position to continue to grow our tech sector, which has been good for us. So I don't know if I answered your question, Senator. I kind of rambled there, sorry, but.
Well, Mr. Chairman,
Back to you,
it wasn't a very good question. I just kind of waded in and knew that the water was pretty deep, but no, I appreciate your thoughts on it. Yeah.
Yeah, and Mr. Chair, again, I guess to boil that down, we're always looking at opportunities, so.
Anybody else? So, Mr. Bush, a couple of questions maybe. I think the original question was whether your company would be looking at that site as a potential, and I think if I heard you right, it's not necessarily out of the question, but you also said there were a lot of third-party interests providing power to try to sell that to the company, meaning Black Hills Power. It looks to me, just looking at the landscape, that there's a lot of third power potential. There are people that have ideas for projects in the future and are trying to get, I understand there's almost a queuing up of people willing to supply power at appropriate prices, perhaps more than you need as we look into the future, maybe not more than you need right at this instant. Is that roughly right? Is there a lot of interest in those third-party projects?
Mr. Chairman, I think so. I mean, we've seen it, as I pointed out those projects earlier, we've seen that grow. And obviously, anyone that drives to Laramie to go to a game or something like that will see the wind turbines all over the place off the interstate there. Again, mostly private.
91 owned by the city of Cheyenne, or 91 on Cheyenne Power, right?
Yeah,
Property.
yep, off of Happy Jack there, you can see those. And we do take power from them, but that is owned by, I believe it's Duke Energy. Yeah. So, and it's an older field, but, it works great still. So, I do think there's plenty of opportunity out there. We would potentially look at something like that, but again, we can't speculatively build generation, so we would have to have a need for it for us to do it. Now, if a third party wants to speculatively build it and visit with us about, moving that power to one of the data centers, to another customer here in town, we've got some other companies that are looking at locating in Cheyenne and potentially wanting a different source of power. Great, let's talk about it. Let's sit down and figure that out. The trick too is there is also a queue for getting into the transmission lines. And when you start talking about that stuff, you get into FERC and NERC and some other issues on the federal level. So there's a lot of steps that have to happen and for this, and these are projects that take years really to come together. But there's going to be good growth in Cheyenne over the next several years. We're excited about it and continue to have those conversations with the developers that want to come in and work with us.
Just a little bit more follow-up, Mr. Bush. Appreciate you being here.
Sure.
Mr. Bush, I think you mentioned that you're potentially going to be involved in a power project, not directly, but a very large one to come online, maybe more than one south of Cheyenne. And those are extremely large, as I understand it, much bigger than the 100 acres that we're talking about here. Do I have that roughly right?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, so there was a project developed by a company called Q-Cells that was then purchased by Southern Power, which is Southern Company from Georgia, I think. They purchased that project. It is a solar farm. It's about 150 megawatts, if I remember right.
How many acres, do you know?
I don't remember the acreage off the top of my head, but it's a lot. You can drive down South Greeley Highway, south of Cheyenne here, and see it. And it's primarily serving the new Microsoft facilities that are going up on the south side of Cheyenne. So we are basically moving the power. We don't own the facility or anything like that, but we did work with Q-Cells originally, and then now Southern Power. And we had a ceremony, I think it was in May or June this summer, as that facility got energized and we started moving things around. So, and then Enbridge is doing another project, which is a pipeline company, as I think many of you know, primarily pipeline. And they are working on a project south of town. They announced, 6 months ago, a year ago, that they were starting to work on the contracts for that and securing the land. So that's going to be, I think that one's even bigger than the Southern Power project. So,
Aren't they some of the biggest in North America?
Mr. Chairman, that I don't know, but they're pretty big.
They are pretty big, I think. We could get more data, but they're multiple times bigger than the 100-acre site that's being discussed here. And Mr. Bush, just one final question. I assume data centers and Microsoft and their power needs are probably pretty close to 24/7. I'm guessing that's right. I don't notice my computer shutting down when the sun goes down. These are solar facilities, which would only provide power for a limited amount of time during the day, would have lower production in the winter than in the summer, would have different challenges. And so that power alone doesn't plug into running Microsoft or any other company that wants that green power. There has to be a way for your company to integrate that solar production and provide decent power to the end-use customer. That must be an enormously complex task and require great investment, perhaps by your company or perhaps by others, so that bringing that kind of power onto your system is not exactly a plug-in and play or such a benign event. Can you describe the difficulties there?
Mr. Chairman, I don't know that I can get into the complexities of it because I'm just a history major, not an engineer, but I think you're right. There are a lot of complexities, and generally all these companies have energy people that work with us to figure out what that plan is going to look like, whether it's battery backup or what other sort of generation they may need or their system may require. But it, again, takes a lot of years, it takes a lot of planning, and it takes a lot of capital to get it done. Microsoft came to Cheyenne in 2014. Dale can probably correct me if I'm wrong, but it was before I was with the company, but I believe it was around 2014, Microsoft first came to Cheyenne, and the planning for that started several years before, and finding the site, securing the power, setting up the contracts, all that kind of stuff. So it's a very complex arrangement that we have with them, and it works well for the city and protects our other customers as well.
So it sounds like renewables aren't just a source of power that you can establish a plant here, set up a renewable production facility and connect them and not have to worry about it. It sounds more complex than that.
Mr. Chairman, I think that's a yes.
Thank you, Mr. Bush.
Keep it simple.
Any other questions for Mr. Bush? Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr.
I
Chairman.
didn't see any other testimony from the room. Fair enough. No other testimony? Anybody online? Committee, you've heard testimony. What is your pleasure? Committee, anybody want to move the bill? I'm not hearing anybody move the bill.
Mr. Chairman, I just need to declare as well that I'm a member of a co-op board in the far west, but it doesn't preclude me, I think, from speaking on this.
I don't think so either.
Either not taking any action or action. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, appreciate your service on a co-op board. Probably the most unique cooperative utility in Wyoming. A lot of special challenges. And, you know, so appreciate you bringing that to this committee. You're particularly, Senator Landon.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I really do appreciate the conversation this morning, and I want to tip my hat to the municipality that brought this issue to us. I like that we're trying to think outside the box, and I like that I have tried to advocate in all my time down here for our local governments. And I do, my heart goes out because we don't allow for very much ability for our cities, towns, and counties out across the state to raise their own revenue. We kind of handcuff our municipalities. But as I said, you know, I've driven by the landfill at our part of the world, and I keep wondering, you know, what are we going to do with those properties? They could be pretty valuable, and hopefully the municipality here can find a little bit different path to get where they want to go there, and I wish them luck. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. You know, you guys, I pass those landfill sites too. They're a little extra challenging to construct even solar facilities on. There's a subsidence issue and things like that. There's potentially explosive gases that come out of them. It's not quite so benign. But it does seem like we could use that space better. But it also sounds like there are third parties in this world that if it made economic sense, they would be there, or maybe we need to search for them.
Mr. Chairman, just like.
Go ahead,
note,
Senator Duxter.
Our utility, our co-op, actually approached our county to do just this very concept, building solar panels and getting it all done, and we were denied by our county. But the concept is there, and we had a plan to put it in place. So I would carry on, but maybe it's with an independent party that could help, or the existing provider help make this happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 42, Resort Liquor Licenses. and I hope we can find a sponsor. He's a very nice man. Senator Guru.
Thank you. Come to you this morning, good little bill, Senate File 42, resort hotel liquor licenses. Before I walk you through, I'll tell you a little bit of the backstory. As everybody knows, there's two reasons why we pass legislation in the Wyoming legislature. The reason we say and the real reason. So I'll start with the real reason, then I'll tell you the other reason, because they kind of are one and the same. This came from a constituent in my district who, through a series of events, wound up with a resort license, but not enough rooms. It's a long story and I won't go into it. So I said I would write a bill and lower the number of rooms needed for a resort license to 35. That's the real reason. I carried this bill last year, and assuming frankly that it would die on a 2/3 introductory vote, and that'd be the end of it, and I go back and tell them, sorry, I couldn't help you out. But something happened. It actually got one vote short of enough to be introduced. Because as we started to talk to people about it, legislators came to me and said, hey, that would work in my community. With all the, money investment we're putting in the tourism sector in smaller communities, whether it's a trail system in the southwest part of the state or a hiking trail or some other thing in other parts of the state, who would develop and what would they develop as these new amenities came online? Would it be a 100-unit resort, which costs millions and millions and hundreds of millions of dollars in some cases, or smaller, boutique, smaller hotels and resorts, and that are a smaller but still substantial investment? So that's how I got within one vote of getting it introduced last year. So I'm bringing it back this year, and so I wanted to talk about some of the specifics and kind of walk you through the bill and respond to your questions. And I'm sure there might be someone or two to testify on this. But basically, what we're trying to do is say, if you build a 35-unit resort and you invest more, and this is, I'll see if I can go here, on page 2, line 9, that you invest more than $10 million in the unit, and you have 35 sleeping units, that's on line 19. And then over onto page 3, that you provide dining services to guest rooms for not less than 12 hours per day. And then you provide facilities for business meetings that can accommodate not less than 50 participants. You can then apply for a resort license. So basically, this is an economic development bill that, yes, at one point came from a constituent in my district, but really I think has good applicability all around the state for economic development and to do what we always talk about, but frankly, sometimes come up a little short on delivering, and that is diversifying our economy. And I guess the last thing I'd say, because I don't want to take too much time, I know you're busy, but with this, what we see this is something for the future. As this builds, right now, we've got trust funds that we're working on to put for trail systems all over the state. Folks are working with tourism dollars that come from our lodging tax, once again, all over the state, working on really exciting plans to try to promote tourism in their communities. So this is just another tool in the toolbox to say, hey, if you're coming to our town and you're investing $10 million, you're employing people, providing services for either small conventions or other tourist-related activities or business-related activities, you can get a liquor license. And so that's kind of the long and the short of it, and I'd be glad to stand for any questions.
Thank you very much, Senator. Before we go to questions, I'd like to inform the committee and the public that I actually own, through a company I own, one of these resort liquor licenses. And if you've ever been to my facility in Lander, it's the old school type where I had to spend and build 100 hotel rooms, restaurant, convention facilities that support folks, have a bar. It's a great license. The great thing about a resort liquor license that's different than other liquor licenses is that if you have a large property you can take and you can set up a bar. You're not restricted to a particular dispensing room, so you don't have to just serve alcohol in this one place. So in a place like mine, we can set up a bar by the pool. Wouldn't be very good in the winter, but in the summer, that's a hot item. We can set up a bar, and I don't have to go to the city council to get permission in the convention rooms. And I could set up 3 bars in the convention rooms for 3 different events going on. And I'm not a little America, but I'm a little lander. And so that's the advantage of that license for me. The restriction on that license is that there is no package service. Guests can take liquor from the bar back to their room, and if they don't open it all, I guess they can take it home with them. I've been told that we could look the other way kind of on that. But there's no drive-up package or anything like that, walk-in package. That is the restriction. It's a great license to partner with the hotel business. Over time, we've expanded that license to actually allow facilities that are kind of close together to share that license. And Mr. Montoya from the Liquor Division will tell us more about it. But if I got 51 rooms and you got 48 rooms and we have a complex that we share, we can share that license. There's been other ways that it's been kind of loosened up. The other alternatives that a place would have would be a bar and grill license, and which we've expanded and seems to be really popular, and the restaurant license. So those kind of allow the same thing, and for the most part, but when you have a large facility, it's impractical because you'd have to go to the city council to get permission to have an ancillary bar in a meeting space. And maybe there's a way you could work that out, but I think that's the real advantage. Do I have that roughly right? And I definitely have a conflict on this bill, but I'm trying to provide people with my particular knowledge of the alcohol serving side of the world. And how am I doing, Senator?
Mr. Chairman, we talk a lot about conflicts, and I know this is one of the, I think, a textbook example of where someone who has conflict actually is an expert in the field, and so I welcome his expertise. And to add on to it, one of the key components of this is that a smaller adult, yes, can sell on premises and have mini bars in their rooms, which are something when you get into these types of operations, that it's a nice amenity that customers want, and that this way they can legally provide, which they can't do with a restaurant license, they can't do with a bar and grill license, to have mini bars in the rooms. And so those types of things, that's the flexibility that we're looking for with this change. And finally, to say, I too have a liquor license.
Brother in the bond.
We're brethren on this, but my license is a full retail license at our local airport and doesn't have any applicability to this.
And Senator, we should also mention that one thing about the resort liquor license is they're not limited by number. There's no tying to population or anything like that. If you commit the investment that that is required under the law, you could be issued a license by the licensing authority. I don't think they have to do it, but you qualify. So with that, questions for the senator from Senator Dockstader.
Mr. Chairman, Senator, you may have said this, how did you come up with the $10 million set and the 35 rooms?
Mr. Chairman,
Go right ahead.
Senator, the 10 million actually came from a suggestion from the Liquor Dealers Association. Try to raise the bar to say, having this kind of investment would preclude someone with maybe a smaller hotel that's already built, that's just looking to add liquor on and really not make that investment that we're looking for. I'm not trying to open the door so wide that every motel in town can do this. I'm really not looking at that. The trick, though, is, and frankly, I'm amenable, and you may hear this in testimony, that raising that number to a higher number is okay, but I was trying to find the sweet spot between making it so difficult that it couldn't be done or just, making it like the Wild West, wide open. And so that's where we settled on 10 million. Is that the right number? I leave to you learned senators to help me with. But I'm trying to find out, I don't want to make it so it's so high that it's only in more populated, more already developed tourist areas. I want to try, like I say, as I started to talk to folks about this, they saw applicability in smaller communities for this to try to, like I say, be an add-on for those amenities that are coming on that we're trying to promote in this state.
Anybody else? Senator Landon?
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. So, Senator, in your experience up in the western part of the state, how big are these facilities when they're coming in? I'm trying to get a sense of 35 versus 100 room. 100 rooms is a pretty big facility. Do we have 100-room developments going in with properties like this?
Senator.
Senator, through you, yes, there are. There are a few in Teton County, and there are others well-known around the rest of the state. But they are not the norm. It's a big lift. And definitely more than $10 million, as I'm sure the good senator can attest, that in today's market, 100-unit facility with a convention center, with a restaurant that serves 12 hours a day is a multi-million-dollar operation and far more than 10. So that's at 35 rooms. It's something that, like I say, you see a lot of motels that have around that number of units, but most don't have restaurant facilities, or most don't at that size don't have the conference facilities. Those are the other two key pieces of this that I think are important to bear in mind. I do have definite experience on the restaurant side of the food service side. Most hotel,
I feel your pain.
motel people will tell you they'd love to stay away from that if they could. But no, we're adding it here because it's part of the amenity package that we're trying to promote in these some new areas that we don't normally think about outside of Evanston, say in a trail system that maybe the way we look at it someday, that maybe there might be just out in the middle of the boondocks on a snowmobile trail, and we have a few of them in Teton County and in other parts of the state, where you just out there so you can ride your snowmobile for 35 miles and then have a facility there where you can spend the night and then move on. And so that's the type of thing, and that would be a smaller play than 100 units, quite a bit, so.
Thank you.
Anybody else? My guess is that a 35-room hotel would be, in most places, not a very economic proposition for investors. It's just not big enough. And if you tried to add restaurant to that, that might just sink the whole thing, or hotel restaurants, they struggle in general. So I don't think that makes it a magically a desirable thing. And I don't think anybody normally in most locations would build a hotel that small. But in a place where the hotels, they can charge a lot more money in the good senator's district. And they're probably great for miniature conferences from industry and other things. And they're probably definitely opportunities there. But I'm not sure that those opportunities for that size of a property exists much else in Wyoming. And I don't mean to, would you agree with me on that?
I would, and Mr. Chairman, I think that's a key point here, and I think the question's very valid. The way I look at this, and the way I think is the correct way to look at this kind of liquor license in this specialized field is a way to make what the good senator was talking about come together and work. 35 units in a restaurant, not going to pay off. It just won't do it. But if you can serve liquor by the drink, if you can have a mini bar, if you can buy a bottle of wine and take it back to your cabin after your snowmobile trip or whatever, that is kind of an adjunct. It's not necessary, you're not going to get people to come to, watch the big game and do touchdown shots and all that stuff. You're really not competing with your local bar or bigger places, but this would be something, like I say, an adjunct to it to try to make a smaller property viable in those areas that we're trying to build economy. Maybe 20 years from now, when they're developed further, more mature, they won't be needed. They'll all be bigger. That's what we all hope, is that they have that success. But getting there is what I'm trying to get at with this.
Fair enough. Senator Landon?
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
You're good.
I really
We're good.
appreciate
We
the
got plenty of time
conversation.
today.
This is, so Senator, if you had to just give a wag, how many of these kind of licenses, let's just say that this passes through and is anointed and away we go with it. Doesn't sound to me like we're going to be handing out very many of these.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, if we did 10 in 10 years, I would be surprised. But the thing is, in 20 years, it may be more. It may be a lot more. So it's something, once again, that it's a long-term play. This is not something that I believe is going to, I know you may hear that there might be unintended consequences, and that's where I say adjusting numbers may be appropriate, and listen to the testimony, and it's something we can all work on together, because I definitely know there are some other ideas out there, like mine's may differ.
Thank you.
Anybody else? I think maybe one last point, the construction costs are astronomical. There's a guy in Lander that redid an old motel. There's a little bit of nostalgia. Some people are going and buying these old Route 66, 287 style motels and rehabbing them and offering as a little higher end nostalgic experience. And I'm amazed at what that gentleman spent to rehab like 15 rooms, and millions, I think. So that's a real shocker. So it's really not out of that question with construction costs today, in my mind, that you could hit the 10 million pretty easy. I imagine a nice restaurant costs a couple million right there on its own. So that 10 million is not scaring me as much. I just don't know how you ever pay for it. And Senator, it seems to me that, though, at the end of the day, that what we achieve with this that we can't achieve any other way is that the resource license seems to provide this constituent of yours with the opportunity to have mini bars in a room. I mean, that seems to be it, because they could have a restaurant license or a bar and grill license, and they could achieve almost the same thing. They would occasionally have to go to the city for permission to have an auxiliary dispensing room, and Mr. Montoya can tell us about that. But this gets to mini bars?
Mr. Chairman, possibly, but actually I think when you dig a little deeper, that it's the flexibility. It's the flexibility that you talked about in your property. To be able to have a small conference and have a bar set up at the conference site in the conference center itself, or your pool example, or, just the flexibility that you get with this, that, with a restaurant license, you've got to draw a specific dispensing area, and you go to your county commissioners or your town council, and that's what's, that and your lease and all that is what you have to provide, and you can't separate from that. And they watch it pretty close. And so you get flexibility with the resort license with that you don't get with a restaurant license. Doesn't mean you can't widen it out, but some communities are very, very, very tight with that, because there is a question about, competing with different segments of that industry. And I'm aware of it. I've got a retail license. So, albeit at our airport, so it's a little bit different for me. So I'm in a very narrow class. And what we do is a little bit different. But still, I understand and I'm very sympathetic to local liquor establishments that see this to a degree as a threat to their business. And I understand it. And I've had a couple calls, and mostly from my county. But on the same token, as I talked to folks, I saw a lot of applicability around the rest of the state that actually exceeded what that one constituent request was in the beginning. And so that's why I kind of, as we have all done in the past, we file bills for our constituents, and sometimes we think, well, we'll see how it goes and we'll try our best, but at the end of the day, it might be a bit of a stretch. But like I say, as I dug into this one kind of tugged at me a little bit for different reasons. And so that's what brought me here.
Thank you. Anything else? Let's go to the liquor division and then we will hear from the public. Mr. Montoya, welcome. Good to see you. It's been a while, sir. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Committee. My name is Tom Montoya. I'm the Administrator of the Wyoming Department of Revenue Liquor Division. First, if I may, Mr. Chairman, I did do a handout for y'all. And I did send it in email last night, and I gave it to LSO here too. I've handed this handout to Corporations Committee for years.
We have a couple of extras if anybody in the audience would like.
And I have some extras too, Mr. Chairman.
If anybody would like, just set it up there if you would, Senator. Thank you. Okay, go ahead, Mr. Montoya.
But basically what this report does is just show all of the liquor licenses that are issued in all the cities and towns in the state of Wyoming. It's just a good recap of where we're at so that we know where we're at the time. We take the latest population formula, which in this case is 2020. The statutes require the liquor division to do on the census years to do a adjustment on the population formula for liquor licenses, like retail liquor licenses and bar and grill liquor licenses are issued on a population formula and statute. And then we do it on the 5-year estimate. And so we'll be doing one when, as soon as they complete the estimate in 2025. And that's usually in late fall when we get those numbers from Department of Administration and Information. And then we'll readjust the population formula. So this is really pretty simple to read. So the very first line, if you look, it's City of Laramie, their population in 2020 was 31,407. By population formula, they are authorized 27 retail liquor licenses, and they have all of those issued. So you'll see it says retail liquor licenses available. Restaurant licenses are no longer issued on a population formula, so they can issue as many as they want. They have 15 of those. Bar and grill liquor licenses in Laramie, they have 14 authorized by the population formula. They have 11 issued. They have 3 available, and on down the line. And you'll see resort liquor licenses, they actually have 2 in the city of Laramie. I did want to point out, if you go down to where you see Grable in Bighorn County, you'll see an asterisk by it. Because if you get to where you'll see they have 5 authorized, but 6 issued, and it's an over-allocation, and it could be due to a number of reasons. It could be that there was a decrease in population. It could be maybe an airport license was issued there, or something like that.
Grable's my kind of town, Mr. Montoya.
Yeah, well, and also annexations. Towns don't annex property to bring a license in. They just happen to be on land that they get annexed in. And so that's how that happens. So, and then on page 4, if you see at the bottom, we have all those different licenses totaled. So for retail liquor licenses authorized, there's 955. We have 803 of those issued. There are just some jurisdictions, like Laramie County has like 55 of them available because they just don't issue them out there. There's nobody out there out in the county outside of the city of Cheyenne. So, and for resort liquor licenses, Senator Dockstader, your question, there were 43 issued in the state of Wyoming. So anyway, that's a recap of that, of the census in Wyoming. On this bill too, Senator Grew did not mention that the restaurant or the F&B, which is food and beverage side of it, can be leased under this bill. So if somebody owns or leases a resort liquor license under this bill, they can actually lease out the F&B operations, which is really quite common in the industry. You see a lot of folks that are hotel people, but they're not food and beverage people, so they'll end up leasing the restaurant out, and that's real common in this industry.
Mr. Montoya, the way you just said that, though, it sounds like that's an aspect of this bill That's actually an aspect of the resort liquor license.
I'm sorry?
You said under this bill,
Yes.
they can lease but the truth is it's under existing law. They can have a lessee operator of the restaurant.
Resorts can, and the
Correct.
hotel resort can as well. They did put that in this bill.
Yeah, so it was just confusing to me with the way you said it because it sounded like you were
My
making a
apologies.
change by saying, under this bill, they can do this. But the truth is, under the existing law, they can do, a resort license can do it. This bill continues that.
This bill continues that, correct, Mr. Chairman, my apologies.
No worries. It's just trying to help people understand. Anything else, Mr. Montoya?
No, Mr. Chairman, I'm open for questions.
Any questions for the committee? Senator Landon?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Mr. Montoya, given your experience in this field, and it's pretty extensive, we have 43 of these licenses out across Wyoming. Any sense of what kind of a driver this bill will be? Any sense of how many more of these resort licenses are going to be qualified for or given over, say, the next 5 years? What's your guess?
Mr. Montoya?
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to have to agree with Senator Guru on this particular one. I don't think there's going to be an overwhelming number of licenses. Our fiscal impact statement said really it's no impact. It would be nothing for the liquor division to just add a few licenses into our system. So I don't see an overwhelming number of them, at least in the beginning.
Yeah, thank you.
Anybody else? Anybody else? Mr. Montoya, just a couple of things. In terms of this existing facility, it would have a choice maybe of using a bar and grill liquor license and would have limitations with that, of course, including the limitation of being required, there has to be one available based on the population formula. They could also have a restaurant license, and that would have, there would not be a limitation based on population, and the licensing authority may issue them a restaurant license. But there would be operational differences between those three things. And could you describe, for example, what are the operational differences between a restaurant license, which would be available, a bar and grill that may not be available, be population limited, and a resort license in terms of operation? We already mentioned the mini bar aspect, I think, and the ability to have satellite bars, but talk to me about that.
Correct, Mr. Chairman. A resort license in this situation would be probably the best fit, other than if they didn't meet the room qualifications. And I believe you said it best, Mr. Chairman, because you can have a lounge, you can have multiple lounges under a resort liquor license. You'll see a lot of resorts will do fundraisers because they can, without having to obtain a catering permit, they can have a pool bar, they can go out in a big piece of property and they can have a fundraiser and set up a bar to do so. But this resort license also allows for a catering permit. That's one of the licenses that can obtain a catering permit. So they can basically go anywhere in the state and set up a bar and do a function. And usually those are some sort of a fundraiser or something like that. The most restrictive is going to be the restaurant liquor license. That's a very restrictive license. They're not issued on the population formula anymore since 2015. Those licenses, just to really allow for the service of alcoholic liquors and malt beverages with a meal. There's a 60-40 rule that 60% of gross sales has to come from the sale of food, 40% can come from the sale of alcohol. There's no package with that. You couldn't do room service with that or that kind of thing. The bar and grill liquor license is less restrictive than the restaurant license. That one will allow you to have a lounge, or more than one lounge, really, if you want to, because now we just license buildings. We don't license exact rooms. Again, no package with that. And that's basically the difference. Then the bar and grill license, though, is issued on a population formula. So depending on where this particular facility is at, and I don't know where that facility is at, they may not have one available.
Fair enough, I appreciate that. Any other questions for Mr. Montoya? Stay close, Mr. Montoya, good to see you.
Thank you.
Who else would like to address the committee? Mr. Mosher, welcome. Mr. Mosher.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Mike Mosher, Wyoming State Liquor Association, thank you for this opportunity. Well, I have good news and I have bad news. The good news is we have a really good bill sponsor. The bad news is this is a terrible bill. To give you some background, in 1967 was when resort liquor licenses were invented. The valuation was $1 million. 100 rooms, as mentioned. Also, there's a requirement that you have to have a place for 100 chairs, if you will, a meeting room. Since then, we haven't changed the valuation. $1 million obviously is not the same as $1 million was in 1967. I actually did the calculation on that. It's about $9.5 million now. The reason we didn't change that valuation is because that's really not the rider on a resort liquor license. A resort liquor license is for a large establishment where you have conventions. The 100 rooms is the real contingency to make you a resort. And so what this bill does, and I did toss out the $10 million last year, and then I got to thinking about it, dollars mean nothing here. Because $1 million in 1967 probably wouldn't buy a whole lot different property in the northwestern part of the state as it would in the other areas of the state. Now $10 million probably, well, in a few years, probably wouldn't even get you a single wide in some areas of the state. The value at $10 million is not that much in certain areas. Now, bear in mind, even though we oppose this bill, we've supported a number of changes. We helped write the bar and grill liquor license. We've increased the numbers of those 3 different times. You remember the tavern, the entertainment component of the bar and grill, which we worked on through 3 interim committees. And as it turns out, only 1 establishment opened up in the entire state that utilized that license that I know of for its intent. We added ski resorts. We've done lots of things. So we've done it before, but on the other hand, every year I hear another group that wants Wyoming statute changed to fit what they want to do. A couple of years ago, they wanted 2 separate buildings to be able to be considered one building. Some of you remember the glamping thing? Remember the glamping thing? Glamping up in the northwestern part of the state, which was a type of camping. So they wanted to have alcohol in their yurts or whatever they call them. I would call them tents, but that's because I'm a Wyoming guy. And those issues we kind of did away with. The glamping issue, honestly, kind of reminds me of this bill because it's area specific. On the eastern side of the state, I doubt we do much glamping. And so in this particular case, the $10 million in one area of the state may seem like a lot, but the discussion and the good questions about how many of these licenses would be created, a lot more than you think. Because what happens in certain areas of the state, if you have a 35-room Roach motel, and a Tombstone pizza toaster oven, and a meeting room with 50 chairs, which should be about half the size of this if you squashed them, you can get this license. Also, there's swap outs. So if you have a lodging property with under 100 rooms and over 35 that has a full retail, that'll get swapped out and put on the market. And so do I think any new businesses will be created because of this legislation? Probably not. But there's going to be a whole bunch of swapping out going on. And that's going to create difficulties in our market. As you know, and as you mentioned, with new construction is very expensive. And so maybe in some cases, but once again, that's contingent on location. What it takes to build a 35-room hotel in the eastern part of the state is a lot different than what it takes in the northwestern part of the state. So are you going to see a bunch of new licenses? Probably by area you will, but in some areas you won't. The area mentioned before where the good chairman is at, yeah, you probably will see some swap outs. Or you're going to see attempts to maneuver around the requirements. The food requirement, we deregulated 5 years ago. And it used to be a lot stricter on what food is. Now it's just food. And I wasn't being facetious about the Tombstone pizza toaster oven. because it's not real strict on what food is involved here. I don't know why this bill is here. A restaurant license would suffice for most. It says food service in here, but I think the idea is to just make it as easy as possible. Those with restaurant liquor licenses, you have a 60-40 food split. I remember when Mr. Montoya and I worked on the bar and grill, vast majority of them were like 90% food. Most of us eat a lot more than we drink. If it was the other way around, we probably wouldn't be here. And so I.
Might be in the legislature.
The only reason I can think of that somebody would want one of these was, number one, a free liquor license, because you have 35 rooms. And like I said, it could be a Roach Hotel, doesn't really matter if you're in the right area of the state, but delivery to rooms. On the other hand, we have retailers that do delivery. And so we've already got that taken care of through our existing retail structure. As mentioned before, people have invested millions of dollars to be able to qualify for a resort liquor license. The only thing, the dollar sign, forget the dollar sign. What we're basically doing is reducing the requirement for resort liquor licenses, and we're making a 35-room hotel a resort. Now, we talk about mini bars, that sort of thing. 35 rooms, you ain't gonna have a lot of room to put up mini bars and exotic events. It's a small property. And so I've worked with a good bill sponsor. I would love to be, I pride myself, committee, on being able to find solutions to stuff, and I've been doing it for a long time. But I can't figure out lipstick to put on this bill to make it acceptable and make it work. I see it as too overdone. I mean, we're not going from 100 rooms to 75 rooms, we're going to 35 rooms, which by my estimation is a small property, and that's not a resort. And so I really don't think this bill goes where we want it to go. I think the collateral damage is a lot larger than what we may think it will. And if you see 6 to 8 new bars pop up in a certain town, just because those hotels can now get liquor licenses, then the retail scene changes. And so, committee, I will be happy to take questions. I tried to be as brief as possible, which is extremely difficult for me. And I'll thank you for your consideration.
Senator Dockstader.
Mr. Moser, why would we be opposed to adjust the template to help business? We do a lot of things across the state that may benefit one area over another, and we're careful to find balance along the way, but to me, this seems like an adjustment that helps business in an area that is conducive to tourism. It's one of our iconic areas, not for our state, but for our country, for the world. Your thoughts?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Dockstader, thanks for the question. If it's the right solution, yes, but there's already a solution. The solution is a restaurant liquor license, a bar and grill license. 1,456 businesses play by existing statute. We can't really rewrite statute, I guess we could, whenever somebody wants to make the rules conform to their business plan. But in this case, I don't think you're building any economic development. You're just gonna make more liquor licenses. Liquor is an odd thing in so many ways, but part of it is consumption is not gonna go up with more liquor licenses. You're taking the same pie and cutting into smaller pieces with the existing businesses. Part of my problem too with it is, what is your definition of a resort? Is a resort 35 rooms? I would hazard to say it is not. It's a small hotel. You can call it boutique, I guess, but boutique would be contingent on the area of the state it is. If you're in the northwestern part of the state with the value of property, everything's boutique. And so my feeling is, I understand the economic development thing. I don't think you're building any economic development with this bill. You're just making more places where people can drink, and they're not gonna drink more because there's 3 more outlets. What it will do is hurt the existing businesses that are playing by the rules, the existing statutes. I hope that helps.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else? Mr. Moser, it seems to me that one of the biggest things this does is defeat the population requirement. So it yields more licenses, and that the licensing authority doesn't have the restrictions that the population ratio does. And that's, the population ratio, it seems to be, is, you know, whether that's necessary or not, we've loosened that up over time. We're we're even have further changes in the future that are built into the law, if I recall right. But that seems to be really one of the bottom line things that this bill does. Would that be fair?
Mr. Chairman, yes, absolutely. And as you know, we are always concerned, and not just us, law enforcement, et cetera, about the proliferation of too many liquor licenses. Liquor licenses are a good thing, but too much of a good thing is a bad thing. If you look at high crime rate areas, it's usually involves a proliferation of liquor licenses. We don't want them on every street corner. We want them highly regulated. We are one of the few industries anywhere that asks for more regulation. We like regulation. So every state has a way of controlling the number of liquor licenses. The ones we loosened up, like the restaurant liquor license, Mr. Chairman, are less of a threat to the community as far as negative things that can happen. The more freely alcohol is served, which is why we control the number of full retails, those take a lot more maintenance as far as know-how, knowledge, law enforcement capabilities, zoning. You don't want a full retail liquor license next to a school. A restaurant, sure. And so that's part of the reason we strictly regulate it, as do other states. In fact, in a lot of states, a lot more so than Wyoming. And so the less risky liquor licenses are usually more unregulated, like a restaurant license. The ones that have a potential of being an issue are usually restricted by number.
Thank you. And in terms of the catering permits that are available to liquor license holders, how do those work? Is a catering permit available to a restaurant liquor license different in any sense than a catering permit available to a resort license or a bar or grill? Or I don't know if a full retail can get a catering permit. I'm not sure about that. Can you explain, is there any difference in what a catering permit looks like? And you might mention how many catering permits you can get and how that works.
Mr. Chairman, thanks for the question. Catering permits are only full retail and resort, if I remember correctly. And you don't see a lot of them anymore. In fact, you might remember, and I hope I can mention his name because he was wonderful, Senator Coe had a bill some years ago to reduce the catering permit from $100 to $50. And part of it is the restriction on catering permits aren't the availability up to 36 per location. It's the cost of insurance. Insurance has priced catering alcohol out of the market. Your catering permit costs $50, but your insurance runs in the hundreds. And I know, Senator Landon, you have in your district somebody that does a lot of that, and off the top, they charge $300. And that's the insurance cost. So catering alcohol is not nearly as prolific as it used to be because of insurance requirements. But I used to cater when I was a licensee all the time, and
I was a customer of yours, so another
yes.
conflict here.
I was probably a better bartender than a lobbyist, but we'll see. But so catering, and part of the reason the catering is limited to those types of licenses is it's really an off-premise sale.
Yeah.
And you're setting up a separate bar. And so it takes a lot different training and knowledge than it does to have a restaurant liquor license, where it's a lot more limited in how much you sell and where you sell. So that's part of the reason with catering permit, you have a lot more legal burden, if you will, by doing that, which is why the insurance is so out of control.
Thank you. Anyway, I'm just thinking, if a facility like this had a restaurant license and it had banquet rooms next to the restaurant and attached, could it serve alcohol in those banquet rooms potentially by wait staff?
Mr. Chairman, I believe, and Mr. Montoya can throw his Title 12 at me if I'm wrong, but it can be included in the area that there is alcohol service, with service too.
You might have to go down a hallway and turn left, but it could be, so it's a possibility.
Mm-hmm. And Mr. Chairman, one thing we did change in statute, gosh, 5 years ago, was to get rid of the dispensing room per se. It's a building.
Yeah.
And so we also loosened up a little bit for restaurant liquor licenses as well.
So is potentially that a possibility for this entity? Potentially.
Mr. Chairman, I would think so. I mean, honestly, especially with insurance, when you start telling them we're doing delivery to rooms, your insurance goes up. And so the more narrowly focused, and that's why a lot of people don't have liquor licenses, is not because they don't want to make money, it's that the insurance costs so far exceed any amount of money you're going to make. Because bear in mind with insurance, it's similar to what we're going to experience with the fires in California. We pay insurance rates based on national averages. And so insurance costs for liquor establishments is just crazy. It's less so, if you will, for packaged liquor stores in some cases because you're not doing on-premise consumption, but we're on-premise, and you probably know this as an operator. Costs have gone up.
Anything else for this gentleman? Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Who else would like to address this bill? Mr. McLaren, welcome.
Mr. Chairman, Bob McLaurin with WHAM. Hate to disagree with Mr. Mosier, but WHAM likes this bill. We think it provides some economic opportunities, particularly for some of the smaller communities on the eastern part of the state and the southern part of the state. So we stand in support of this bill. I also wanted to let you know that Mayor Paxton from Douglas was wanting to come down to testify today, but could not. And she says the city of Douglas is very interested in this piece of legislation. I'd be happy to answer any questions, sir.
Thank you very much. Questions for Mr. McLaren? And there's a little bit of conflict, I think, between Douglas is interested. It's not in the eastern part of the state. So that's of interest, that there is an interest elsewhere. And I think that might be in this gentleman's district. Senator Boner.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I began to half joke that maybe we can make an adjustment based off the number of oil rigs in that particular area.
That's a great idea.
I think, yeah, we have similar problems for, I assume, very different reasons. But yeah, it's absolutely become an issue recently in my neck of the woods, so.
Thanks. Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. McLaren? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Anybody else? Anybody else? Anything online? Committee, you've heard testimony. What is your pleasure? Motion by Dockstader. Discussion? Senator Gruy, did you want to address anything? Or little rebuttal?
Rebuttal, not necessarily. And I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I do want to say one thing. My friend, Mr. Mosier, was talking about this, and actually one of the benefits of being old, I've been through this before. In 1980, I opened a restaurant downtown Jackson. 1986, Super Bowl Sunday, as a matter of fact, had a fire. And it was closed for a year. And in those days, there weren't restaurant liquor licenses. Restaurants had to get retail licenses. In our community, we had far more restaurants than we had licenses available. So the restaurant owners hired me to come down to Cheyenne and try to get a restaurant liquor license built. Spent the whole session here working on it, and actually worked with Mr. Mosier's predecessor, a fellow named Leo McHugh, as I recall, and came forth with that bill. And I mean, it opened up the dickens. We had every liquor store owner down here saying it was going to ruin them. It was going to put them out of business. And there was no economic development. And we crafted a bill that had all kinds of regulations. An enclosed dispensing room. There could be no dispensing of alcohol near the public. So that way you weren't competing with a bar. So you couldn't say, come down to the restaurant and have touchdown shots and all that. So none of that, and then we wrote the law painstakingly to ward off this horrible Armageddon that was about to occur. Well, let's see what's happened. Nothing except economic development, millions of dollars into this state. Restaurants today can serve it. Of course, it had to be somebody in Jackson who built a bar and then closed the dispensing room with what? Plexiglass. And then all of a sudden beat the enclosed dispensing room law. And so between entrepreneurship, which is important, and just good old-fashioned chutzpah, we've worked through that in this state. The bars are still working fine. People are making money. Restaurants are serving alcohol, and people are getting served, and our tourist economy and just the local economy in general with this sort of thing has improved.
Thank you.
I just give that as an example. Sometimes, we don't need to look at too many boogeymen, and I don't think there's one here. So
Thank you, sir.
On and for, and thank you very much.
All right. We had a motion by Dockstader and discussion line.
Just a real quick comment or two. these are tough bills sometimes that we face. You know, we've got friends on one side and friends on the other side, and like good Hank Cole used to say, I stand with my friends. This is, this reminds me of our good friend from Sheridan County. And Mr. Moser's right, we've made some progress, but I tip my hat to the former senator from Sheridan County, because he's the one that, remember, he used to throw some firecrackers in the middle of things, and he'd come down here and pound his fist and say, you know, people ought to be able to serve in more places. And so we have made some progress. I'm not sure, I'm still pondering which way I'm going to go on this bill, but appreciated the chance to learn a lot this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Anything else? Does anybody want to offer any amendments? Senator Dockstader.
No amendments, Mr. Chairman. Do you want to do the amendments, and then I have a comment?
You can make your comment first. It doesn't matter to me.
Mr. Chairman, as you well know, I have no expertise in this area whatsoever.
I
But,
bet the folks back home are kind of glad that that's true.
but geographically, this area is under my responsibility. And so I stand with that area and their opportunity to increase business. And as we heard from Mr. McLaren, there are other opportunities in the wings waiting. So with that, I'll be in support of the bill.
Thank you, sir. I'm just asking for amendments. It was discussed about the number of rooms. I don't know if anybody's interested in increasing that number, but not seeing any motion on that. Are there any other motions you might offer? Any other motions? Let's call I'm sorry, Senator Boner.
Yeah, sorry, just real quick, I think this is really important. This isn't just a Teton County issue. This is, any number of towns can grow from any number of reasons. And, I'd just like to give my thanks to my colleague from Teton County. We're in the same position in Commerce County, and I think it even extends into west side of my district as well, where there's a lot of constraints by this archaic system. And it's just really frustrating when that inhibits growth. And so in full support of the bill, and hope we can move it forward.
Thank you very much. I'm not hearing any amendments, so I think we should call the roll on this bill and try to get to the next bill.
This is a roll call vote for Senate File 42, Resort Hotel Liquor Licenses. Senator Boner.
Aye.
Senator Dockstader.
Aye.
Senator Landon.
Aye.
Senator Steinmetz.
No.
Chairman Case.
Conflict.
With 3 ayes, 1 conflict, 1 no.
Who would like to carry the bill on the floor? Senator Boner? Kind of up your alley. Oh, I'm sorry, we've got a sponsor. I forget about him. Yeah, I'm sorry. No, you did very fine. The next file for our consideration, Senate File 46, Water and Sewer Districts Bid Requirements. Senator Landon and Boner, you're both on this bill. Tell us about this bill.
So, Mr. Chairman, thank you. If it's all right, I'll just stay put right here.
Okay with me?
Okay, so committee, late in the interim, we had a visit from a gentleman who represents our water and sewer districts out across the state. There are many of them. I believe that Mr. Pepper is online today and may testify here in a little bit, but it was too late for us to draft a bill and too late to get anything done in the interim. His request was that we take a look and consider doing what we did a couple of years ago for the municipalities, and that was to raise the bid limits for construction work. And that's really what this bill does. I won't spend a lot of time on it, Mr. Chairman. We're running out of that this morning, but what this bill would do is raise from 30,000 up to 75,000. In my homework, I tried to determine when the last time was that we raised this. It may have been in 2015, but I think it was in 1999 was when that bid limit was established. And we all know that there simply is not the buying power that there used to be. There are time constraints involved here, as everyone knows. To go through a bid process can be pretty onerous. So it just makes sense to me, and that's what That's what Senate File 46 does. It just simply raises that bid limit. Be glad to have a conversation, answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for the senator? Senator Boner, did you want to say anything? You're a co-sponsor.
No, Mr. Chairman, I mean, this was, the 2023 legislation was at the request of the town of Evansville, and which the good senator to my left was kind enough to kind of queue up as we made a transition with our districts. And I think it's important that we make these adjustments every once in a while. And obviously, our dollars don't stretch, as much as they used to. And so I think our statute should reflect that. So.
Okay, anybody in the audience wish to testify on this bill? Anybody? Anybody online? All right. Mr. Pepper, welcome. We're trying to meet a deadline, sir.
Can you hear me? Am I live and in color?
Yes.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think both Senator Landon and Senator Bonner have represented the issue that's before us. It's just a matter of the last many years. We've had inflationary constraints that have really made the 30,000 pretty onerous in terms of trying to get things done. A lot of projects are in that 30 to 75,000 range. So raising it up to that 75, and as Senator Landon said, the onerous timeframes a lot of times in advertising for bids and so forth just has kind of outlived its usefulness as far as being able to advance timely small construction projects. And I'd stand for any questions. And I apologize, Mr. Chairman. I've been traveling a lot lately, so I'm a little tired this morning. Mark Pepper with the Executive Director of the Wyoming Association of Rural Water Systems, appearing today representing the 220 plus special districts that own and operate water and wastewater systems.
Thank you, Mr. Pepper. Any questions for Mr. Pepper? Any questions? No questions, Mr. Pepper? You got off easy? Doesn't look like there's any other testimony. Committee, you've heard the testimony. What is your pleasure? Let's give it to the hometown kid. He's on the bill. Yeah, we'll give that to Boner. And discussion on the bill?
Mr. Chairman, just
Senator Landon.
real quickly, and the senator from Torrington may know about this, but my understanding is that we may see another measure related to our irrigation districts. I'm not sure, but we'll keep an eye out for that. I have been told that there might be a consideration coming. But anyway, I appreciate the opportunity to bring the bill.
Okay. Anybody else? There's no worries that we should be bidding stuff like this? Allowing other folks to participate in selling services to our governments? Senator Landon.
So, Mr. Chairman, thank you for that. A couple of years ago, we did work with the Associated General Contractors. They were involved, signed off at that time, and I think that might be why we have not heard a great deal about this one. I just think that threshold makes a lot of sense. We did that with municipalities. It seems to be working well, and so it just seems reasonable that we would allow our special districts the same consideration. So, thank you.
Thank you, sir. And I'm taking it there's no proposed amendments. Anybody want to make an amendment? Not hearing that either. So let's call the roll on this bill. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to clarify who moved it.
We're going to, Senator Boner moved the bill.
This is a vote, roll call on water and sewer districts bid requirements, Senate File 46. Senator Boner.
Aye.
Senator Dockstetter.
Aye.
Senator Landon.
Aye.
Senator Steinmetz.
Aye.
Chairman Case.
I'll just say no for fun. No, I really am a no. I think
You have
that's a lot of
four-
money,
four no.
75 grand. Thank you.
4 ayes and 1 no.
Thanks a lot. All right, committee, we've got more bills on Friday. Appreciate your good work. I I hope you appreciate that we took extra time on a couple bills today really for educational purposes more than anything. We got the rest of our work done and appreciate you. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, who would you like to present that on the floor?
I assume these two gentlemen will work that out.
Yeah, I'll take that on the floor.
Okay, Senator Landon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, see you guys on Friday. I think we'll try to start 8 o'clock on Friday. We've really moved some bills, you guys.
Sorry, I was waiting for one to move and I didn't.
Yeah, it's,